Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Matt Moody, Fake Moods on Twitter. I am Moods on DraftKings and on Underdog. And what I'm here to do today is to basically take you through how I review things. Obviously, as a fantasy hockey player and hockey knower and hashtag puck knower, I watch a lot of the games. But in reality, especially nights like Thursday night, you just simply can't watch everything. So what I want to do with this video is take a tour around the league. We're going to look at each of the first, I believe, 21 games this NHL season. And we're going to break them down using a number of resources that I use in my day-to-day process, and also take a look at my daily routine as far as when a slate starts. What sort of things am I looking at before the slate, so on and so forth. So that is what we will be doing. I am not sure what to do with these intros. I made a little thing down here, you can see, but the camera doesn't fill it. I don't know what to do. I didn't really want to play around with it anymore. I just wanted to get to it. So with all that said, let's get into it. First and foremost, of course, you should be checking out my newsletter, the Moods letter, if you will, moods.beehive.com. If you missed it on Wednesday, I previewed the slate, broke down every single game. Also, if you missed my season preview article, it's coming from me, but I think it's really good, and I think that if you're here, you will very much enjoy it, so please read that. What I do for these breakdowns, though, is pretty straightforward. I showcase what the slate looks like from a high level, and then I break down each team, and I showcase what their lineup will look like and give my thoughts on each team summarized in the Moods Dudes section for each team. So this is basically your cheat sheet to the fantasy slate. Obviously, these are DraftKings prices, but this analysis will also apply to Underdog, and I make reference to Underdog, and also for betting. I'm not a huge bettor myself. I bet, occasionally, but I certainly prioritize fantasy over betting. But all this data, all this analysis could be put to use in the betting space as well if you are so inclined. So make sure you're checking that out. I do that about once a week. Next Tuesday, there will be a massive slate with 100K to first over on DraftKings. And if you're interested in what that looks like after the fact, I do basically a flagship GPP breakdown. And it's about once a month as a result of the DraftKings schedule. But basically, I walk through my entire approach to the slate. You can see on this slate, it looks like I had a pretty good week. Last year in the January 360 Spinorama, made about, I basically talked about, I guess, what looks like a 10-11K night. Obviously, there's a lot of entries that go into this, so certainly a lot of volume at play here. But yeah, I walked through my approach to the night. There you go, 11.8K on 8K in tickets and entries and whatnot. So yeah, you can expect that next Wednesday is my point. And so yeah, that is the first thing that I should be advertising. The second thing is HockeyViz. So actually, I guess because of the setup of this, I actually want to do this last, but you can see the basic framework on HockeyViz. You can see every single game, and I will go through how I analyze games using this. I should also point out that on the homepage, I'm not sure if tomorrow's games will be posted yet, given it is Friday and there are no games today. Yeah, here we go. So there is previews from HockeyViz on each game, and it gives you a very, it's his model, so take that with a grain of salt. But how Micah's model sees each game playing out, and you can use this to inform betting, inform player takes, so on and so forth. Certainly something that I do look at. And then as we get later on in the season, this is a really cool visual to see how much the games matter. So that's some stuff to do before a slate. And also before a slate, make sure you're checking out the Morning Skate podcast. Obviously, Podcasts come out on Tuesdays and Thursdays primarily, so the next podcast you'll get from us will be that Tuesday slate where we preview the $360 Spinorama on DraftKings and talk about that slate with 100K to first. And if you're more of a YouTube person, we also stream those podcasts over on DJ's YouTube channel at NHL DJ in the YouTube bar here, but also just search for him. You know, there's not too many games in town when it comes to DFS. It's basically us and the Stochastic guys that are very regular, so make sure you're checking them out too if you haven't gotten your haven't quenched your thirst for NHL DFS content. As far as the daily sites that I go to are sort of, I guess, lining up, RotoGrinders is the site that I have. As someone who plays tennis and Counter-Strike fairly regularly, I have the RotoGrinders like yearly pass. I don't use RotoGrinders to build lineups necessarily. I use it to look at ownership, to test what the field might be doing and see what sort of stacks are pairing together. So I'm not going to do like a optimizer, tutorial or whatever in this video. But one of the things that I'll quite often do is I'll run basically something that looks like this in the stacks tab. I'll run 3 stacks on DraftKings for the slate. In order to make it run, you just got to set these to 100%. I will set some rules, just, touch and feel kind of deal, just to get a little bit of randomness in here. But basically the idea is, if I run an optimizer, what sort of combinations am I going to get? And therefore, what is the field most likely to come up with? And then in order to actually make it run, you need to make some manual edits. And the easiest way to do that is just delete some of the lower projected guys. You need to make 2 adjustments basically. So as long as you're not, locking in someone that would skew your results, I just remove 2 guys who will never show up in optimals anyway. I'm not sure, this might be for tomorrow's slate, the projections, it might be for last night, I'm not sure. But you can see that's what the raw optimal is, and then I can run 100 lineups, and it'll take, you saw that, it took me maybe a minute and a half to set up, and this will take about 3 minutes to run, and I'll be able to see like the most common stack combinations that pop up. On a 14 game slate like yesterday, that analysis is actually a little bit, like it's almost impossible on a 14 game slate to like have a true chalk, line plus line combination. There's just so many options at so many price points. But it's very helpful when we get to like those 8 or 9 game slates where there are a lot of options, but you do tend to see ownership funnel into certain spots, especially like when Edmonton, with McDavid and Draisaitl are so expensive. Does that force you onto cheaper stacks that therefore become super popular in combination with one another, even if, Edmonton's 20% and the cheap stack is 5%? Well, guess what? All 5% are coming with McDavid Draisaitl. So like, how do you manage that in your portfolio, so on and so on? That's the main thing that I use RotoGrinders for here. So that's why I use it as part of my daily process as a single lineup player who's not, running this optimal or anything of the sort. While this finishes, I will shout out Puckluck. I was a little questionable on what Puckluck's plan was for the year. Just hadn't heard from Jay, hadn't reached out, certainly a failure on my end too. But I did just want to point out to the people that he did make a pretty major announcement. Here, I'm not going to go through it, but basically he redeveloped the site, redid his pricing structure. So basically now you just give him $20 a month and you're going to get all the stuff he mentions here that's coming. I'm super interested in the optimizer tool that he's coming out with. It'll include some of the chemistry, referee analysis, and customizable weights, which is super interesting to me. So again, I'm not affiliated with Jay. I've reached out to him many times. We've had many positive conversations, but this is in no way, a targeted ad or whatever, but just something that I'm very much looking forward to. But something that I do look at, very similar to Micah's model that I just was showing. Jay puts together betting picks and projections. which, by the way, I did subscribe to Puck Luck Plus, so, going forward, you're going to need to do that if you want to see these. But it is, similar to Micah, something that I would recommend if you're a serious player. But he puts together a nice card for each game. I was looking through the revamp he did, and it looks great. So shout out to Jay for that. And I'm glad to see him back in the space after, there was no best puck stuff, but clearly he had a lot of stuff going on the back end in order to get this going. So, and then if you're interested in truly betting, he's got like a bunch of, confidence bets and whatnot for you folks. Otherwise, there's nothing here, unfortunately, but this is the thing I use most often on Puck Luck, especially when I have a bit more free time before slate starts. I'll admit my Thursday was a bit crazy, so I didn't bet anything beyond what was offered as far as the boosts. It was like a Schaefer boost, which, I don't know, what is... what's the point of doing a ton of research into that? But Jay puts together shot distribution for every single player in all the matchups for that day. And it's super nice to just be able to visualize, even some of the alt odds, just what odds are good or bad for that player. I'm not using this to inform my bets, but I'm using them to test them. If I'm between three guys for, say, a boosted bet or something, maybe I'll pop in here and click on it just to see which one is the quote-unquote best play. Yeah, so that is Puck Luck. Not going to spend too much time there right now because some of the stuff is coming, like the optimizer and the other stuff. You can't see tomorrow's slate yet for the shot module, but I certainly would recommend those things to anyone who's interested in going a bit deeper and wants, that hand-holding kind of tool kit at your disposal. I also grab his projections when I put together the rainbow chart. I don't have that up right now, actually, but if you've been around the Discord since last year, once we did a couple weeks into the year, I put together a natural stat trick database that basically gives a profile for the slate, call it the rainbow chart, but it has basically all the team matchups and so on and so forth on it. And again, we'll get into that. It'll be on the podcast stream and whatnot once we have enough data to use it, but here's where you access it: community, file share, DFS player prop projections, and you can just download that. That's what I do. That's how I use Puck Luck. The last thing, Occupy Fantasy and Wookie Sheets, patreon.com/DFS Hockey. I use these two sites as well. Occupy has a nice connection of player, salary, team, ownership, and then Vegas information that I like to have available, and that goes into, say, my Excel sheet and whatnot that I share. But of course, this is what I will say about Occupy is that if you are, and honestly, let's just do Wookie it too, because they're very similar in that if you are a lower bankroll player and you don't want to spend, a ton of money on, say, a Roto Grinders, or, maybe even like Stochastic or Saber Sim, even more expensive, I think, the Roto Grinders, I think you can get by with really good information. You're not getting as much customizable stuff out of Occupy and out of Wookie Sheets, but I would say that is sort of that is a bargain bin, ways to get really good hockey data to implement for your own process. So Wookie has a full-on video that I should have shared it multiple times by now, but make sure you just go to his Patreon and check it out if that sounds interesting to you, where he breaks everything down and more stuff even, just like me. There's stuff that he will implement as we get more data this season that go up on his Discord and in different looking sheets. So yeah, that's Wookie. And then I already covered Occupy. They also have a lineup builder that I know MN Matt uses, Nolt, in the, I don't remember his numbers, Nolt 0132 or something, in the DFS lobbies, the crusher, if you will. He won one of the slates that I wrote up last year, actually, ironically enough. But he uses the Occupy lineup builder, and they have a lot of really customizable characteristics that are pretty unique to hockey Just as far as like anchor stacking, like every stack is not built equally, kind of like in baseball, where just you're playing guys because they hit on a team, and if that team does really well, they'll get more at bats. In hockey, it's much more like, Nikita Kucherov and the Tampa Bay fourth line have no correlation. Like Kucherov not getting shifts with, Luke Glendening or whatever, Curtis Douglas. Like, that doesn't really matter. But he is getting shifts with Brandon Hagel, who is not on his power play, who is not on his 5-on-5 line. So you can sort of control for that in your Occupy lineup builder. And again, I'm not doing advertising for them or whatever, but that is something that if you're interested, it will run you a bit more money, but it's still cheaper than, say, a Roto Grinders or whatever. So now the final thing, just to get back to the Roto Grinders aspect of it, when you run a bunch of these stacks, you can then see the stack summaries. So it looks like on yesterday's slate, just using a little bit of randomness, Minnesota, San Jose, Carolina, Utah, Calgary did show up. Again, you're not learning much from this because there was just so many options yesterday that you didn't, there was no natural funneling of stacks into just overlap with other lineups. But on other slates, you can run this and get a sense of, looking at the top lineups. Oh, is it just all Minnesota, Calgary? Obviously, in this case, it's not. But there are some cases where you could reach that conclusion and have it be, somewhat valid. So, yeah, that's how I use Roto Grinders. That's pretty much everything that I look at as far as before a slate starts. I rewatch the show that I do with DJ. I'll usually watch the Stochastic guys, on a show day. But otherwise, these are the things I'm looking at. I'm not going into, I don't build my own projections. I'm not doing any of this type of stuff. As a single lineup player, I don't really find that to be what I enjoy about the sport. Projecting every single player down to the decimal just doesn't sound entertaining. But I do spend time like researching and digging in and just making sure that I have the proper perspective on that night's slate. And then what we're going to do next is, now that the slate has finished, we can dig into what actually happened on said slate. So I think HockeyViz is the best place for that. So as far as like going through, let's change the topic basically and get into what has happened so far this NHL season, because it's been like I said, it's been 21 games, and can't possibly have watched 21 hockey games in the amount of time that has elapsed since opening night and right now. So there are a few things on HockeyViz that I think you should look at. By the way, on HockeyViz, this is free for anyone to examine. The only catch is, if you are not a paid subscriber to HockeyViz, you are unable to view this until 3 p.m. Eastern the day after the game. So, for example, last night when Philip Hedl stole a bunch of money from me because Sissima played him and made me sad, I got to go look right after the game finished at, okay, well, Sissima got 2 goals from Hedl, but like, what did Hedl's shot profile look like? And okay, Hedl had 5 shots and 3 missed or blocked shots. You can see that on the cake chart here, as Micah calls it. So I guess maybe maybe it was a good play. It wasn't just 5 shot attempts, all luck based, 0.1 expected goals total. Like, no, he had a very nice night. You can see here, led the entire game in expected goals. So shout out to Sissima. But yeah, I got to know that right away instead of having to wait until 3 p.m. So, starting off with this Colorado-LA game, both of these teams are interesting in that we have multiple games now to work from for them, whereas everyone else, we pretty much only have one game. I think it's them, Montreal, and Pittsburgh Rangers. Basically every team that played Tuesday played again, so okay. But we do have multiple games to look at here. I've done this in the Discord already, but looking through some of this data of the 4-1 loss for LA, it wasn't really clear that they were outplayed necessarily. I thought the first couple of periods are quite boring. You can see in the shot pressure chart that Colorado did tend to carry play in the first. The second was about even. However, it went from 0-0 in the first to 3-0 after 2, mostly because Colorado just finished on their chances. And then the third period, this game went nuts. LA kind of took over. Didn't result in anything. They still lost 4-1, but there was a lot of fun stuff going on. So how do we sort of dig in a bit further on that? Well, you can look at the shot locations. You know, I don't know if you're really gathering a ton about, like, you know, was this game crazy or whatever, but you can see, you know, the different expected goals numbers for even strength for special teams, which this doesn't necessarily tell you, the 2.8 to 1.7. So you can see that Colorado had 1.2 expected goals at 5-on-5, and LA had 1.9 expected goals at 5-on-5. So most of the difference was at 5-on-5. The power play for each team was fine, and both teams actually struck once on the power play. So not a huge distinction for that. However, just Colorado got the finishing and LA didn't. Next up, we look at the specific players. For LA, pretty standard: Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere. Actually, I can zoom in a bit on this. So, yeah, going forward, can I? Why is it's like getting smaller when I zoom? So, I guess I can. I could do this, but that's quite annoying. Okay, well, this is, I think, good enough for my purposes. Apologies if you're trying to watch this on like a phone or whatever. The top power play, 5-man unit, scored. Malat, Turcotte, Armia, the fourth line, didn't play much. Something that I pointed out right away and was very excited by, Brandt Clarke leading all defensemen in 5-on-5 minutes. They trailed, so it made sense. Clarke got up to nearly 20 minutes of time on ice. And if you know anything about his track record, he is a per-minute producer. It's just the minutes that have been a problem for him in his career. So that makes me think, oh, you know, that's quite good. On the Colorado side, Lehkonen, McKinnon, Nachos, top line, played all the minutes. Lehkonen kills penalties, as does Brock Nelson, which makes them quite interesting going forward. If they're going to be seeing, you know, a substantial 5-on-5 role and all the special teams work, those two guys in particular might be better served as, you know, one-off pieces than a McKinnon or Nachos, who sort of have to rely on the power play to get there. Not that it's a huge deal, but, you know, block shots matter. Also, the price tag typically doesn't reflect PK time versus obviously power play time. Just is so correlated with offensive output that their prices tend to price that in. So it's worth keeping an eye on guys who, say, jump up from power play 2 to power play 1 and are already killing penalties, because that just gives them a higher time on ice floor. Otherwise, Cale Makar playing 23 minutes, no surprise, maybe a bit low, but again, they had this game in the bag for the entirety of the third period, pretty much. They sweated for maybe a minute and a half at one point late in the third, but you see a guy like Gabe Landeskog only played 11 minutes, so that is something we will want to check back in on coming up on Thursday. So yeah, that's this Colorado-LA game. Only other thing that you could look at, that I tend to look at, is this 5-on-5 expected goals chart, where anyone in the top right had a good game, where they had a lot of expected goals for while they were on the ice, and not a lot of expected goals against in this top right here. Anyone down in the bottom right is fun. Anyone in the lower left is bad. You know, Sam Girard only had 20% of the expected goals in a game where Colorado as a team had about 46% expected goals at 5-on-5. Which obviously is a problem. And of course, we see Brandt Clarke. You know, just really, really cool stuff there from the best player in the world. I'm sure that is not a bearer of bad news to come. Let's get to Pittsburgh and the Rangers. A lot of analysis from this game. I think you can pretty much just throw it out when it's all said and done. The injuries, I think, are the most relevant thing to JT Miller and Panarin. They just did not look themselves. Brazo, Mantha, Malkin. I already closed out the Wookiee sheets, but I actually did mean to pull up the fact that on the Wookiee sheets for that opening night, he had Pittsburgh 2 as like his 4th or 5th best 5-on-5 line target. And the Wookman himself took down a contest for, I think, $17,000 in the main GPP. Split it with some friends, actually, because a couple of people played, expensive line with Pittsburgh 2 that wound up getting there. So shout out to those folks. I believe I Like Kitties was one of them. And I think there were a couple others actually too. But again, we shouted them out on the podcast already, so not going to spend any more time there. Yeah, Pittsburgh was just a better team here. Not really sure if that's going to last, obviously. When it comes later in the year, you can look at more things like 5-on-5 matchups. I'm not too worried about that at this point. I will showcase a couple of spots where I'll use it to prove an argument, basically. But I don't know if there's much predictive power in saying, oh, well, Crosby went out against JT Miller primarily, and Crosby won those minutes. Yeah, that probably means JT Miller's the matchup guy at center. But we knew that. For most of these teams, we have a good sense of who the matchup line and pairings will be. Something else you could look at is the 5-on-5 D with forwards. I still prefer to stack through the power plays. However, there are some cases where you get clear situations where a defenseman will primarily play with, say, the top line. Ekholm, Bouchard, McDavid, Draisaitl is a perfect example of that, so we'll check in on them from this Wednesday game. But you could use this chart to get a sense of that as well. But I didn't see anything from the Rangers game in Pittsburgh that was super worth pointing out. So Chicago at Florida. Florida was pretty dominant here. 3-2 win when it was all said and done. But those 2 goals were from the Chicago 2 line. You can see that in this game, everyone on Chicago got pretty much decimated, though. It wasn't like Chicago 2 was holding their own territorially. They just had a couple of really nice plays, which, execution matters. But the process wasn't necessarily the best. For Florida, because they were the home team, because there's no Barkov, I was actually a bit surprised to see the Bennett line go out against Bedard. I would have thought that Lucic, and Lundell, and Reinhart would have been the quote-unquote shutdown line. However, Bedard, Donato's Burakovsky looked so bad that it seems quite plausible to me that this was a noted change where it was oh shit, Bertuzzi, Nazar, Teravainen have a bit of jump. Well, let's put a stop to that by putting Lundell out against them. So we have a Philly game to look at for Florida to see what they did, so maybe we can learn a bit more there. For Chicago, something you'll note is that we saw Donato flip-flop with Connor Bedard. So when you're looking at the line chart, if you want to know who played with who, you just look at the strength of these bars connecting the players. Burakovsky and Bedard have a very strong bar, and Donato's is a bit thinner. You can see that basically at some point during the game, Donato turned into Bedard Mikheyev, and Donato moved down with Doc and Dickinson. So that is one very important thing to use with this player usage chart. It'll help you get ahead of the field, especially on a back-to-back type situation, where if the lines are not confirmed before the skate, the pregame skate, there's no morning skate on a back-to-back. So having a situation like this, we would have known, okay, well, Bedard and Donato will not be together if there was a Chicago game on Wednesday. Sam Renzel played 25 minutes, but right after the game, the coach said, hey, we got to stop that. So it was hard to take too much from that little aspect of his time on ice. For Florida, no surprises in terms of the time on ice. Their bottom line didn't play much at all. Their bottom pair played a little bit, but basically they're a top 4, top 6 type of team. Top power play, sure, whatever. We knew everything here, so not necessarily going to spend too much time on Florida. So that was Tuesday's games. And then on Wednesday, whatever. It's kind of reverse chronological because I just click them in order and it goes start to finish when I, like, whatever. Basically, the first team I click goes to the bottom, but I'm just going to keep working through. LA and Vegas. First and foremost, a 5-5 game that went to a shootout had 5.5 total expected goals. So clearly some finishing ability was on display in this one. Of course, anytime there's 10 goals in a game, you're going to find that the goalies were quite bad. But, this was obviously one of those cases. The flow of the game had largely LA in the lead and Vegas playing catch up until the middle of the second period. Well, actually, the end of the second period, where Dorofeyev scored 2 power play goals, and then they very quickly added to it in the third, and then LA tied it. So that's how you can see how the game flowed. The 5-on-5 matchups were, I think, a little bit interesting. Eichel and Marner were being used as, well, if you want to say they were the shutdown line, they went out against Byfield. So teams are viewing Byfield, Fiala, Laferriere as their top comp, which makes perfect sense to me. I want you to take a note of this Brandt Clark column. Look at all the red we see. Red means it was good for LA. Black means it was good for Vegas. When Brandt Clark went out against Eichel and Hertl, they did not allow a single shot against. Very interesting for a team that apparently couldn't stop a beach ball in this one. Because you go to look at the 5-on-5 or the ice time, and what do you know? Even in a game where he played excellent, he scored even at the end of the game, he only had 15 minutes. And part of that is because of the penalty killing. You see that they had 1 power play basically, and they scored almost immediately. So what you gonna do there? But even before that, he was not getting any 5-on-5 run. So I don't know. You can't play Cody Ceci and Edmondson more than Brandt Clark. And the fact that they won this game, just bad feeling about what we're going to learn from this if you're Jim Hiller. So a very unfortunate development for us Brandt Clark believers, but it is what it is. Something that we should keep note of, 5-on-5 defensemen at home. Mitch Marner, Eichel, Barbashev played exclusively with Shea Theodore and McNabb. That's not a surprise, but worth note, they kept it up basically. And we of course have a road game to look at too coming up when they win to San Jose on Thursday. Calgary and Edmonton. This game was pretty fun. Edmonton had 4.1 expected goals and scored 3. Calgary had 2.7 and scored 3, and then won in a shootout. As far as the performances go, just a whole lot of nothing happened on the ice until Draisaitl, McDavid, Ekholm, Bouchard went on the ice. So very fun little development there. You can see that Bouchard playing 29 minutes, McDavid 26, Draisaitl 25. Trent Frederick only played 17, compared to those guys, but that's still pretty good. I mean, 17 minutes from a guy who, one is not good, but 2 is not in a power play or penalty kill role is quite solid. But that's, you can see that basically at 5-on-5, Frederick was glued to Draisaitl. McDavid double shifted a little bit, is sort of how I read these black readers of the time on ice. Tomasek playing 13 minutes, almost half of which was power play time. Just a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, not a ton happened at 5-on-5 when he was on the ice. He's up somewhere in this cluster of nonsense. So, a name to keep an eye on. Calgary did some flip-flopping with their lines. We'll get a better sense of what they looked like based on their game in Vancouver. But here's the main event. Draisaitl and McDavid just nuked. I mean, obviously. But no matter who they went out against, they did very well. So, I mean, yeah, I think we knew. Those guys are really good. And they played in a 5-man unit with Ekholm and Bouchard. Interesting that Calgary did something similar. They basically put Uyghur with Coleman, Backlund, Zari. They didn't have control of the matchups though, so I'm not positive like why that would be the case. I would think Uyghur and Kadri you would want together, especially if Kadri was playing with Coronado, which he was down the stretch. But whatever. Calgary's a bit weird at the moment, given they also just are scratching Zane Parekh for 2 games where I'm not really sure that he's their 7th best defenseman. Next team up, Boston at Washington. Just a clear goalie game. Jeremy Swayman was on one. You can see Washington dominated play. Had a 4.0 expected goals, only 1 actual goal. Boston scored 3 on 1.7. Boston's top line was excellent. Pasternak, Lindholm, and Geekie scored all 3 of their goals. Literally Lindholm, Geekie, Pasta all scored. And Lindholm kills a little bit of penalties, but they actually use Fraser Minton to kill penalties. He's a prospect for them. So kind of interesting. If he grows into a power play role of any kind, right away he could be like an 18, 19, even 20-minute guy if he's defensively relied upon in his first few NHL games like he is here to kill penalties. On the Washington side, they did switch things up as they were losing, so we'll see what happens on Saturday, but McMichael, Strome, Ovi, Protas, Dubois, Wilson is what they finished the game with. I would also not be surprised if Ryan Leonard threw a wrench into things somewhere along the way. They also had a lot of power plays, and Ovi, Strome, Wilson, Carlson, Dubois. Let's see, Ovi. So Ovi didn't play the entire 2 minutes on every power play, but let's take a look at the final thing here, because Ovi is a very interesting candidate in this regard. Okay, so the first power play, Ovi. So this is the game chart. Obviously, you can see I'm looking at Ovi here. Sorry, the text is small, but maybe this one. Yeah, this one I'll zoom in for you. You can see the flow of the game, starting from puck drop, going through the thick black lines of the period intermission markers, and obviously the end of the game. And if you look here, you can see all the things that happened, be it a goal, be it a power play. And so what I want to look at is what happened here. And so this might, I'll be honest, we were recording, so I did not watch this game. I do wonder if this just wasn't a power play and something weird happened that got marked as such. Because, like, well, no, you're right. No, that's just wrong. Because, yeah, Ovi, Strome, Wilson, Dubois just only played, like, 40 seconds of it. And then Protas, McMichael, Leonard, Sandin, Chychrun. Okay, so they finished the power play. Got it. That makes much more sense now. So Ovi did not play the entire power play here. They take a penalty, and then they get another power play late in the period, and Ovi does play the entire shift. So that's interesting. Who's the guy who did not come out? It looks like Protas, McMichael, Sandin, and Chychrun. So there we go. Ryan Leonard, when Ovi does his Ovi thing and does not change on the power play, might be the guy who gets hurt by that. So going on, we see a 5v4, 5v3, 5v4. Any changes for the 5-on-3 part of the power play? That would mean, yeah, Chychrun replaces Dubois in a 5-on-3. Worth noting. And then Ovi changed after the end of the 5-on-3, so thus we see Leonard again. Alright, cool. Another one later on where Ovi does change, and then that unit gets to go back out again for the end of the power play. So yeah, Jake Chychrun looks pretty good in this, especially if you're pairing Ovi with someone. John Carlson may not have the rates anymore, but certainly Chychrun has the rates, and it looks like he has a pretty decent hold on the power play. Even if he's not the first guy over the boards, he is over the boards in the 5-on-3, and they're prioritizing him in the power play too as well. You know, they're not leaving him on the bench while Ovi stays out in the Ovi spot. So good looking out there. Anything else here? Nothing stands out to me. So let's keep going. Montreal, Toronto. Another game I didn't get any chance to watch this. I'm surprised to see that Montreal pretty much controlled play here. Obviously, Toronto scored mid-third period to take the lead and then got 2 empty netters, so it was a very close game throughout. That obviously looks a bit skewed by the scoreline. But Caulfield, Bolduc, Slafkovsky, Suzuki being the 4 best players in terms of expected goal generation is very good sign if you're a Montreal fan here. The usage also looks quite solid. 20 minutes for this top line, all perfectly power play correlated, and they basically roll 3 third lines after that. So when you look at some teams, they have a clear top 6 and bottom 6. For other teams, they have a top line and mishmash. Seems like Montreal is the latter. So Slafkovsky going to be a good value option until he gets priced up. And maybe like a second liner shouldn't necessarily be thought of a second liner like you would some other teams. Oliver Kapanen was the story for Montreal. He scored a shorty and he scored again against Detroit. So worth keeping an eye on him, but no power play role at the moment there. At home, Toronto, even without Mitch Marner, looks like they used Matthews primarily against the top line in Montreal. So that means they get a match with McCabe Tanev. For some minor correlation purposes, if you like Morgan Riley, maybe consider Tavares Nylander going forward, especially at home, because the power play and the 5-on-5 correlation seems like it'll be slightly stronger. I don't see anything else, so let's get to the 14 games on Thursday. We'll start off with Anaheim at Seattle. By my money, Anaheim was very impressive. They came out piping hot. They kept up the pressure pretty much all game. They had a bit of a tough third period, but then, with the goalie pulled and whatnot, they still managed to generate some chances. But this first 30 minutes of the game was really, really impressive. I was not expecting that from these guys. And yes, it was Seattle, but, we love to see it for our cutter bags. Jackson Lacombe had, 11 shot attempts. Cutter had 8. Zellweger had, is that also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? 11 or 12 attempts for Zellweger too. And Beckett Seneca had 5, including the only goal for Anaheim here. Seattle, not a ton of note, though if you picked up on Matty Beniers in the preseason, another 5 shot attempts for him in this game. It's interesting. Maybe he's turning a corner as far as his fantasy rates are concerned. When you look at the 5-on-5 matchups, it's a bunch of red because Anaheim was quite dominant. Minchikov, Hellison had a tough go of things, it looks like, relatively speaking, and that is confirmed by this overall chart. Whereas Trouba and Zellweger were great because they are great. Nice job, Olin Zellweger. Thank you for your services here. Top line, by usage, it was Cutter, McTavish, and Seneca. They looked it too. Leo Carlson, even late in the game, they had a power play situation where they just did not, where they did not have Leo Carlson on the ice. They had Gauthier, McTavish, Seneca, Lacombe, Zellweger. Actually, let's just pull it up here because we can do that. Late in the game, this 6-on-5, McTavish, Cutter, Granlund, Colangelo, and then Lacombe, Zellweger. Yeah, I remember that. And then they went to, McTavish, Granlund. Who's missing here? I don't know. That's weird. It's like no one was on the ice in this little sliver. But maybe my eyes are just misaligned. But yeah, Leo, Kreider, Seneca. Okay, here's what I'm thinking of. Leo, Kreider, Seneca, McTavish, Cutter with Lacombe. So Troy Terry immediately not looking like a key fixture in the lineup for Joe Quenneville. With a new coach, just seeing who his guys are when the chips are down. This could be a fact that just the second line was rolling so much that you just want to get them out there. Of course, I'm of the belief that that second line is full of their best players because they are the top 5 draft picks we fawned over on the podcast and whatnot. Seneca as a right shot is super valuable on this team because Troy Terry is the only other right shot, and if Terry is rendered obsolete by a more superior talent like Seneca, Terry's going to have a tough time. And Seneca could very easily ascend to a bona fide top line, top power play-esque role, even if he's not listed as such, given what we saw in Game 1. Otherwise, Lacombe playing 25 minutes, not a surprise given the contract he just signed. They did some line switching. Obviously, when you lose 3-1, that happens. Because they went back to Cutter, McTavish, Seneca, though, I suspect that that'll be the case next game. They'll give it another shot. So we'll keep an eye on that, though, for Saturday's slate. Another game to look over, Vegas and San Jose. First off, fairly even game. Now, if you watch this, San Jose blew it in the most San Jose way possible. Just 2 unforgivable goalie gaffes that, Alex Nedeljkovic would certainly like to have back. So, very tight game. San Jose, definitely should have won. But Vegas hung in there and wound up winning in overtime. Dorofeyev, once again, after scoring a hat trick in Game 1, scores in Game 2, but more importantly, has 7 shot attempts. It very much looks like the year of Dorofeyev. He's pretty much put Theodore on ice already when it comes to the first power play unit. Vegas not super impressive against a bad San Jose team, but they were traveling on a back-to-back, so, you gotta forgive them a bit. And they had no Noah Hannafin, so they slid Ben Hutton into the lineup, and that just made Shea Theodore even more important. So him playing 25 minutes probably shouldn't have been a surprise, even without the power play time, which is just crazy. He was everywhere. Braden McNabb also played an elevated role. Loves on White Cloud. I think Hannafin's absence will be short term. I did not look into that though before this video, so just keep in mind if he's battling something on and off and say doesn't play on back-to-backs or whatnot. Eichel, Marner, 23-22 minutes. Stone, Hurdle, Dorofeyev, all 18-19. Wild Bill and Riley Smith kind of left out. But that's because the top power play played such a significant portion of the ice time, it looks like. Whereas Eichel, Marner are your top line. Stone, Dorofeyev, Hurdle, Saad, Carlson, Smith are your your middle 6. And then the fourth line is how I expect that to go going forward. Once again, when you look at the 5-on-5 D with forwards, Theodore was pretty much glued to Jack Eichel, so great for him. I think the Shea Theodore bags are not dead if Jack Eichel has a true MVP-esque season. But we're grasping at straws there. But certainly a tougher sign for these bottom, middle 6 guys when they're just frankly not getting exposure to Shea Theodore at 5-on-5 because there's really no one else in the lineup who's going to benefit them greatly. So maybe ding Hurdle and Dorofeyev and Stone a bit because they're not playing with Eichel at the moment. San Jose, interestingly, Celebrini pretty much glued to Klingberg and Leddy. They're 2, I guess Orlov too, but 2 of their additions in the offseason. So if you're stacking Klingberg on the top power play, of course it would make sense to play Will Smith and Celebrini with him. A pretty, I don't know if this was matchup based or what, but a very clear effort to get top line with their top pair and second line with the second pair, with really no mixing and matching as far as that deployment was concerned. Anything else we did not look at here? Looks like Orlov and Mukhamadullin had a pretty nice game for themselves. I believe Mukhamadullin is the scratch in favor of Sam Dickinson, though, on Saturday. So, nice try. But the owner wants Dickinson in, and we'll be damned if Shakir Mukhamadullin will stop him. And yeah, no one really dominated otherwise in this game. The Skinner, Delandria, Graf line excluded. But none of the main guns for Vegas were fantastic, though they were mostly good, and Hurdle kind of got dummied, probably by Skinner, Delandria, Graf. Going from Vegas over to the Vancouver hosting Calgary game, we see the Hedl experience, like I showed a bit earlier. Philip Hedl, 0.53 expected goals, scored twice. Pretty dominant showing from Vancouver. I mean, Calgary threatened a few times, pressure-wise, but ultimately 1-0, kind of snoozer defensive game. I don't think Demko was particularly good in this one, and they wound up scoring 4 goals in the third to put it away. I want to say the total shots in this game were super low. Let's see if we can show that somehow here. Yeah, Vancouver's played 1 game and they allowed 17.7 shots per 60. That is, third in the league. So yeah, not a huge output, and only 25 for obviously all at 5-on-5 there. So pretty boring game there. Who knows if that'll be a sign of things to come. Quinn Hughes played 25 minutes, was a fantasy disappointment. But remember, that's the Quinn Hughes experience, ultimately. Very high ceiling, low floor type of player, just given the way that he creates his fantasy points, which is not through shooting and through blocking, but through goals and assists. Interestingly, Evander Kane played 17 minutes in this game. His line mates, Lekker 14, Coots 11, and this also includes a couple shifts that Coots got with Elias Pettersson getting banged up. He took a hard hit and left the game for a bit, so Coots probably not an option right away. But, obviously you need to keep in mind for the future as an 18-year-old. Evander also on the top power play, so yeah, Evander's going to be a clear target for me until his price reflects the elite fantasy producer that he is. He had an assist and I believe 4 shots in last game, and I believe he had more attempts. Yeah, he had 4 shots and 6 attempts, and that's just the way he is. So if he's getting 17-18 minutes a night and is on a power play note with Quinn Hughes, and it's not like Besser, DeBrusk, or Pettersson are obscene users of shots either, so Evander will get his due. And when you watch Evander, you can just see it. I mean, he takes bad angle shots all the time. As long as he gets those on frame, good for him. That's good for us for fantasy points. The 5-on-5 matchups are, I guess, a little interesting, though they're so spread out that under a new coach, it doesn't seem like Vancouver's tipping their hand as to what they want to do. Pretty much everyone played against everyone. I'm not reading too much into the results of these matchups because I don't know what was intentional here. Kind of interesting that for the 5-on-5 units, it does seem like Pettersson, DeBrusk, Besser was glued to Quinn Hughes. That helps Besser, Pettersson, DeBrusk to always have Quinn Hughes on the ice with them, but they're not necessarily volume guys anyway. So you're banking on efficiency there. You're banking on the power play. So it's not like a huge thing just because none of those guys are insta lock and load type one-off plays. You can one-off them in DFS, but you just realize that they need 2 to 3 points to get there rather than the 7-shot, 1 assist, 3 blocks kind of game that some forwards technically have in their bag. Calgary, I don't see much else here. Obviously, they rolled with different lines. We knew this based on warm-ups. Kadri, Greedon, Coronado was interesting. Didn't really work. Greedon -4, Coronado -2, Kadri a -3. Let's see the under the hood results. It looks, I guess, okay for Coronado. It looks pretty bad for Greedon though, and it looks okay for Kadri too. So maybe Kadri Coronado sticks. They rolled with that a bit in training camp, but a rookie going -4, I don't think is good news for Mr. Greedon there. Utah and Colorado. First thing I wanted to check was the minutes for Mr. Gabe Landeskog, and yeah, we see again 14 minutes for Landeskog, only 15 for Nichushkin, which is interesting. I mean, he also kills penalties and is on the second power play, so it's not necessarily a Landeskog driven thing, but maybe it is Landeskog driven and Nichushkin's just unlucky. But Brock Nelson, sizable role thanks to the power play time. And then this top line is just a true top line. Nate Chouse, McKinnon, Lehkonen. Colorado wins another game, so unlikely we see that change anytime soon. Brent Burns playing 21 minutes is not bad either. Thinking of his 5-on-5, or thinking of his overall production, he had 8 shot attempts. I mean, this is who he is. So if he's playing 21 minutes, yeah, you're not super likely to get 20 from him, but it's very possible that you grind out 7-8 points depending on his price tag. That could work, and then any points from there are certainly a benefit to his fantasy scoring. The man of the hour, Mr. Dylan Guenther, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 shot attempts. Did I get that right? 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, so maybe 11. But yeah, Guenther, clearly the focal point of this offense. Clayton Keller just is not the same sort of player. So basically when you play Utah, you're playing Guenther no matter what, as long as unless you're playing the third line or whatever, which Godspeed, but the power play runs through him. 5-on-5, he's got a monster shot rate, and Guenther's now killing penalties. I mean, this dude is just doing it all for this hockey team. Yeah, he played 20 minutes, a little bit lower 5-on-5, with Cooley, Keller, and Schmaltz getting a decent amount of run. Slightly more than Guenther, but you cannot turn down a 20-minute effort from Guenther in any sort of format. Interesting here that Oli Mata dressed. So they did go 11-7, it looks like. So what does that mean? Did Mata just get hurt immediately and they just kind of got fortunate? Let's see. Oli Mata played 1 shift and then immediately got hurt, or just didn't come back. So that's it. That's interesting. So they did go 11-7, which explains some of these minutes a bit more clearly. And yes, that is how HockeyViz organizes things. Oh, not the right team. Where even an 11-7 setup, Micah knows that there's not 3 pairs and 4 lines. We know based on the roster who's playing forward and defense. So that's another useful trick to use HockeyViz. As far as the overall pace is concerned, it looks like it was a decent game, just pretty good goaltending with 5 expected goals between the two teams. And let's see the Colorado matchups at home. Looks like Jack Drury got the majority of the Cooley, Paterka, Guenther line. So if they can turn Colton and Olofsson into a passable defensive line, I mean, Colton's a good player, but Olofsson is certainly a one-trick pony, and that one trick is not defense in any form. I think that's very interesting just for them as an overall team level. McBain, Keller, Schmaltz, I mean, they nuked the Nelson Landeskog Nichushkin matchup, which kind of interesting. So maybe, I mean, I don't have many Landeskog bags, but so far based on what we've seen, I would just sell any Landeskog stuff you have right now. It seems like there's really no upside to him based on the minutes he's playing. I mean, he doesn't even show up on this shots thing. I mean, he's never been that guy either, so unless he's glued to McKinnon, I don't think he's that valuable from a fantasy standpoint. Anything else here? 5-on-5, Taze, McCarr, McKinnon, we knew that. On the road, Utah seemed to establish this Dursey, well, actually, I guess Dursey with Keller, Schmaltz, McBain, Sergachev with Stenlund, Kraus, Yamamoto. That's bizarre. Okay, so they basically just made sure that whoever they wanted to get McKinnon out against, that Sergachev was out against that line, which, okay, I get that. That's one tactic that coaches do to sort of control, to let things not get out of control on the road. Speaking of getting out of control, Dallas at Winnipeg, 5-4 finish, absolute masterclass of a game. Started out relatively exciting. Rantanen and Connor trading goals early. Pretty boring stretch mixed in with a Lundqvist goal. And then Dallas goes apeshit for, a few minutes at least to close the second. They open it up in the third by scoring 3 quick ones. And then immediately try to pack it in. And here come the Jets to tie it, including a Kyle Connor hat trick. So yes, Mikko Rantanen, 3-point night, and Kyle Connor, a hat trick. I believe, all of Rantanen's points were primary points as well. So you do love to see that for my Rantanen best ball bags. Heiskanen, 27 minutes, Harley, 22 minutes, Lindell, 22, Lundqvist, 17, Bischel, Lyubushkin, 13 and 12. This is exactly what you want to see from this Dallas team. Yes, that third pair is maybe not the worst pair in the world, but they certainly should not be getting 18-19 minutes. So giving those minutes to Harley and Heiskanen and Lindell in some extent, certainly a good move in my book. We did also see Rantanen and Hintz jump around with different line mates all night. We saw that Hintz steal Rantanen, Johnston, Robertson, Bork, and Blackwell, Duchesne, Sagan was what they were starting with. And they did that, you can see they definitely did the thing, but it was much more spread out than than other teams might have if they set it up like that. We see here that, Robertson getting all sorts of shifts. We see one in the middle of the first period with Rantanen and Hintz. Pretty steady down the stretch, it looks like, with Hintz and Rantanen. So I believe you're safe to stack those three. I mean, even if you're wrong, the power play role is still quite good for all three guys. But Hintz in particular was very surprising in this one. He had 6 shots on goal. Nope, that's 7 shots, 8 shot attempts. Rantanen had 6 attempts, and J-Rob had 9 attempts. A lot of expected goals for these three as well. So, yeah, I believe that this is where the offense funnels through. No surprise, of course, but nice to get a clear representation of that on opening night. Kyle Connor scored 3 goals on 0.46 expected goals. Really not much to say, but tip your cap to one of the best goal scorers we have, and I hope he enjoys all of that money he has. Connor, Scheifele, Velarde should play. Yeah, they should have played a lot with Morrissey. They did. That leaves, Pionk and really no one else, because they have Sandberg on the shelf, which is a big deal for them. Leaving them with the rest of the lineup, so it didn't really matter for Dallas here. I'm sure they got Scheifele out against Rantanen a decent amount, and yeah, it just didn't matter. So I'm not sure. In other matchups, that might be a relevant thing where, the competent pair of Morrissey and DeMello go out with Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, who aren't great defensively in their own right, but they're probably better than the husk of Jonathan Toews with Chibrikov and Nyquist. They're almost certainly better than Nemesnikov with Iafallo and Niederreiter. Basically, this first month of the year, while Adam Lowry's on the shelf, they really won't have like a solid shutdown line in their middle six. So getting, non-first lines against Winnipeg maybe is the key. Or, Hellebuck just has a neat 60 save percentage all season, and that's how you make it. I don't know. Columbus and Nashville, did not watch a second of this one. Almost 6 expected goals, 3 actuals, so I guess a nice performance from both Jet Greaves and UC Saros. Brady Martin, in his debut, played 13 minutes, got secondary power play time. Looks like Forsberg, O'Reilly just went out with Stamkos kind of every other shift, so those guys got 19 minutes plus the power play time. Yeah, that's about what I would expect from Martin. Kemmel, one of the lowest time on ice guys, but note that he should draw out with Evangelista being back. I don't suspect that'll change anything substantially from these lines or, any other lines or anything, but just worth noting. For Columbus, Voronkov, Monahan, Marchenko, despite trailing, they never really deviated from their lines. The only thing that I could see them doing is Jenner Fantilli with Kent Johnson. Werenski playing 27 minutes, really no surprise, but I would have thought Denton Matejchuk played well enough last year to deserve a bigger role than just 14 minutes, so I guess worth keeping an eye on if those minutes have to come from somewhere. But yeah, Ivan Provorov playing 24. Kent Johnson, he should be with Jenner and Fantilli. I might have just mentioned that, but Cole Sillinger I don't know. He's not a top 6 winger, so I don't know. Chinikov, doesn't cut it. I don't know why you're putting Kent Johnson with Coyle and Olivier, so Godspeed to them, I suppose. Here's a really interesting one. Nashville at home, using Forsberg and O'Reilly primarily with Shea and Perbix. Yossi with Yost, McCarron, and Cole Smith. That's really weird. I can't recall that ever being a thing, so a little disappointing. I don't even know how the line combinations roll out for this to even make sense, because somehow Shea and Perbix just played with the entire top 6, I guess, and no one else, and then Stamkos, Svechkov, Kemmel getting the third pair, and the fourth pair getting Yossi. That's crazy. I honestly don't know what to make of that. It's not like they spent a ton of time on the power play or anything to screw things up. It just kind of seems like what they intended. So, so I'm just going through trying to line up the shifts to see what's happened there. Because first period it looks like they pretty much played together, and then from there on out, pretty much right after the goal they gave up, they didn't even come close to seeing the ice together except for on the power play. Very strange stuff. I don't know what to make of that. It's I don't know. I wonder if Roman Yossi's not fully healthy, if he only played 23 minutes, as did Brady Shea. Or maybe they were just easing him in, is more likely, because I think the sort of medical issue he's dealing with isn't necessarily injury-based. Also, this color for Marchessault is very cool. I don't think I've ever seen highlighter yellow on Micah's stuff. So, always something new over on HockeyViz. Anything else? I guess we can look at the cake chart. Marchenko leads the way, 8 shots on goal, 10 attempts. That's pretty nice. 5 shots for Werenski on 12 attempts. Forsberg leads the way on Nashville expected goals with 8 attempts of his own. Looks like Nashville hit 3 posts and CBJ hit 2 posts, so there's that. This seems like it was a pretty decent game, just low scoring. So, maybe outside of the Roman Yossi-ness of it all, everyone else in this game, I think, would make sense to dive back in on. Anyone in particular stand out here? Okay, it looks like just Columbus stands out here. Severson had the best game, but really everyone had a pretty solid game on the Columbus side, except maybe Werenski Fabro has a pair, but Werenski played 27 minutes, so him breaking even seems perfectly fine given his talent level. Alright, next game, Minnesota and St. Louis. I did not see this one coming into a one-sided blowout. However, for Minnesota, this is doubly good news because it was the exact people you would have expected to contribute in said blowout, Rossi, Boldy, Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov had a post and 3 assists, and Ryan Hartman filled in for 2. Basically, their 4 best forwards, their 5 best forwards were all involved the way you would hope. So maybe good news going forward. Foligno, Eriksson Ek, Tarasenko, I guess they are a third line. I don't know. Maybe in a different matchup, Hartman, Tranian, Johansson doesn't do a ton, but with a clear fourth line, Ogren, Haidt, and Hinostroza, not an overly big concern. What I really like is a 5-0 Minnesota win. Zeev Buium stays on the top power play throughout and gets a 20-minute run. Maybe, just maybe, this game was so far out of hand that like they could just roll him, a normal shift through the third period and not worry about, quote unquote defensive inefficiencies. But man, I think this is about as bullish as you could be on Zeev Buium. The unfortunate thing is he's more of a stacking only guy. Only 2 attempts in this game. He doesn't seem like a guy who's going to block shots or, threaten the shot bonus all that often in his NHL career. So, of course, while that could change, I'm not betting on that per se. St. Louis did have a few decent producers based on the expected goals. Looks like they had a couple posts, including one by Jimmy Snuggerud, but not an impressive output considering how badly they lost. The lines, all that they really did was switch out Snuggerud and Neighbors. So Snuggerud down to the third line, Neighbors to line 1 with Thomas Buchnevich. I believe we saw practice today though, and then there were no changes. Like even Shen, Holloway, Kyrou stayed the same. So Buchnevich, Thomas, Snuggerud, I would assume, stay together. And the power play units didn't fluctuate at all. So probably not blowing it all up based on one game only. Another chart is their 5-on-5 zone deployment. You see the red, that's defensive minutes, zone starts specifically. And yeah, Ryan Hartman got all the zone starts there, which is very interesting because they have Joel Eriksson Ek. So yeah, I guess Ryan Hartman's their new shutdown center. So, and obviously Brock Faber, took a lot of those minutes, but Zeev Buium and Spurgeon took even more, and Faber got slightly more offensive zone starts. So yeah, again, wheels up for Zeev. I mean, really nothing else you can say there. At home, the 5-man unit for St. Louis of Parayko, Fowler, Thomas, Buchnevich, and now Neighbors, but whoever that winger is, makes sense. At 5-on-5, Rossi, Boldy, and Kaprizov spent most of their time with Bogosian and Juracek. I assume that's a matchups thing. Again, Minnesota's on the road, so they're not controlling things. Let's see, who's the forwards they were trying to get out against that power line? I mean, basically they just tried to keep Holloway, Kyrou away from Boldy, Rossi. Otherwise, they were pretty much fine with whoever. They did try to get Fowler, Parayko out against them, but I don't see why you would aim to get your third pair defensively out against those guys. So yeah, I can't really intuit what the thought process might have been there, but we will take that going forward and see what comes of it. I can't say it's a bad thing. It's not great, but it's also Kaprizov and Boldy. I mean, who cares who the defensemen are when they have the puck? So that'll do it for this one. And yeah, we're just going to do this for every game so far, so bear with me. But hey, you signed up for this. Carolina and New Jersey. Okay, 9 goals, 3 posts for New Jersey, including 2 by Jack Hughes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 posts for Carolina in addition to the 6 goals they scored. Holy shit. That is quite the game. I did watch a chunk of this. This was the one on my iPad, and my stupid ESPN app on the iPad just doesn't play games through commercial breaks. It just pauses and then freezes every time there's a commercial break. So if I'm trying to watch 3 games at once, I won't catch that that screen is just frozen. So yeah, that's very annoying, and I've tried complaining to ESPN about it. But Mike, if you're watching this, fix your shit. Okay. The main thing that I was going to look at, Carolina at home. Jack Hughes saw a lot of Sebastian Aho. That, I think, is a carryover from last year, where Aho turned into more of the shutdown guy for them. Jordan Staal still took a top 6 matchup against Hischier, Timo, and Mercer, but got run over in doing so. So that's interesting. Maybe if Stankoven shows, as much presence as he did last game, where they just dominated the third line for New Jersey, maybe he grows into just fully taking over Jordan Staal's role. But yeah, this team is Sebastian Aho's team now. No surprise, but Jordan Staal playing 14 minutes is a pretty bullish sign for Sebastian Aho and for the other top liners. Like, there's really no threat anymore, like there was a few years ago from Jordan Staal, who was one of the best 5-on-5 defensive players in the game, and thus, those minutes weren't as fun offensively, but it at least made sense to play Aho, less, to get Staal out there more. There's no such barrier. Wheels up for Aho Jarvis Ehlers, playing 22, 21, and 20 minutes in a regulation game on Thursday. Power play, Gostisbehere on the top unit, didn't fluctuate. Svechnikov got some run with Aho, it looks like, but not enough to really, threaten Ehlers or whatever. Gostisbehere, Nikishin leading the way for Carolina. I mean, that pair is going to be a ton of fun. We'll see if he can hold such awesome results like this. But both players certainly willing to get involved in the action. And yeah, there will be a lot of stuff happening with them out on the ice, and thankfully for now, it's all good stuff, it looks like. The deployment, Jordan Staal with Chatfield, K'Andre Miller, Slavin mostly with Aho Ehlers. That makes sense. At home, you use Aho in the matchup minutes with Slavin, so there you go. And Luke and Jack Hughes glued at the hip. Who knew? I mean, it's almost like they're brothers or something. Just wanted to see the preview for this game. Yeah, obviously the model loves Carolina, so I like seeing the red. All right. I guess cake chart we didn't really look at. No, we did. Yeah, we looked at all the posts and stuff. So let's keep it going. Islanders and Pittsburgh. Let's see. I think the Islanders had about 742 shots, and one of them was by Matthew Schaefer. DK phoned it in, of course, when they made their boosted bet of the day. Matthew Schaefer props only. And thankfully they posted something other than the goal, which was what it was when the promo was first pushed to me. So that would have been quite funny if I was just like sitting there looking at a boosted bet and like literally couldn't bet it, because you're not betting him to score a goal at any odds that aren't like 100-1. So yeah, that was interesting, but only 3 attempts for him and 1 on goal. It looks like Palmieri, Lee, Horvat did most of the damage. Matthew Barzal only having 4 attempts, I guess somewhat concerning. And also 2 power play attempts, 1 shorthanded attempt, and 1 5-on-5 attempt. So not exactly what you want to see early on, but just 1 game. We'll see if he can turn around the 5-on-5 shot production. But Palmieri had 4 attempts, and Lee had another 6. So Barzal being the setup guy, certainly very good news for Kyle Palmieri and Anders Lee. Horvat, Duclair, and Heineman. Let's see what Heineman wound up playing minutes-wise, because that was an interesting name. Druin, Horvat, Heineman. Druin is suspended for 1 game, so we'll see how they replace that next game. But, well, I guess with Duclair. I think I said Duclair and I meant Druin. But, yeah, Heineman's kind of stuck in the top 6. I mean, 13 minutes, but no power play time. Kind of feels like the main difference. Though Anders Lee did up to 17 minutes as a non-top power play guy, so could have been better, but also could have been worse for Heineman here. Tony DeAngelo, 24 minutes. Schaefer, 17 in his debut. Not too bad. I would like to see the D'Angelo minutes come down, but honestly, I don't know if we're ready to give those minutes to Schaefer yet, and the handedness means that, it's one of D'Angelo, Pullock, or Mayfield who's going to play with him anyway. So, on the Pittsburgh side, okay, we got a little bit of a switch. Koivunen seems to have moved off of the Crosby line. With Crosby, Raquel glued at the hip, Malkin also on the power play with them. I know they started the game with those guys together actually, so was that just a novelty thing or what? So they started off Hollander, Novak, Kindle, Crosby, Malkin, Brazo. Okay, so that was just clearly a novelty thing then. Immediate power play, they score. Malkin and friends, Crosby and friends. And yeah, it's basically sometime right around giving up the goal to make it 3-3 is when they moved Koivunen to line 3. Yeah, so Hollander, Raquel, Crosby. Hollander, Raquel, Crosby. Hollander, Raquel, Crosby. Hollander, Raquel, Crosby. And then 5-on-6 lead protection minutes, I guess, were Crosby, Malkin, Raquel. But yeah, Hollander, so maybe a name to keep an eye on. I admittedly don't know if they had practice or not today, so maybe we already know that information. Defense. I did not look at the defense here. Erik Karlsson playing 21 minutes. Chris Letang playing 26 minutes. PK time helps for sure there. But yeah, Ryan Shea, 23 minutes. Wotherspoon, 22. So Brunick and Caleb Jones not playing much at all. A bit of a shame, I guess, for Brunick, but whatever. It's Pittsburgh. I mean, not going to be playing a ton of them, I don't think, this season. Philly at Florida. People were big mad about Matvei Michkov, so let's figure out what happened here. 2.7 to 2.0 expected goals. Noah Cates with the only goal for Philly, and also had 5 very good chances, and no one else in the team really came anywhere close. Michkov had 2 okay chances. That's it. Reinhardt, a bunch of attempts. Marchand, solid number of attempts as well. Samoskevich, Lundell. Yeah, kind of just seems like Philly got deaded by Florida. They had a couple boosts, but mostly this game was all Florida. So I guess props to Dan Vladar for having a good game. Interestingly, on the expected goals though, Philly looks okay. So that's curious. 5-on-5 expected goals. A lot of this damage was done on the power play for Florida, and a lot of the Philly chances were through efficiency, or through high danger chances, and not necessarily chucking pucks at the net. If you think back to Rick Tocchet in Vancouver, with obviously a much different talent set as far as the roster he was working with, but Vancouver was also a team that thrived on high danger chances and really struggled to generate Corsi attempts. So looking more and more likely that is an intentional thing. Not the best for fantasy players, since we like the comfy stats of shots and blocks to really get us by. Blocks, I guess, aren't a problem in this setup, but shots are the primary issue. So Dvorak, Couturier, Michkov, Brink, Cates, Forrester, Konechny, Zegras, Tippett. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I expected. The penalty kill just had to play so much of this game. The penalties were 5-2 their power plays were 5-2 in favor of Florida. So Michkov still basically, the fourth line is the fourth line. That's very good. We like that. And then the other 3 lines pretty much rotated. I can't say I expected anything more than this. And when they don't get much by way of power play opportunities, I guess this is just what you're left to look at. So, no real concern with Michkov, honestly. Like, I think this was just what's going to happen, for a lot of games in Philly until they really prove they have the talent around him to generate some up-tempo affairs. Travis Hanheim, 27 minutes. Drysdale, 23. Drysdale with Konechny, Michkov, Zegras, Tippett on the power play. No surprises there. But yeah, we would just like to see more of those power plays, let's just say. Florida treated Couturier, Michkov as the danger line, which I think they are right to do so. So they stuck Lundell, Luostarinen, and Reinhart out against them and won those minutes decidedly. Another reason that I'm not too worried about Michkov at the moment, because yeah, we know this line is incredible for the Florida Panthers. Anything interesting with D and forwards? The shutdown pair having Gus Forsling for Florida makes perfect sense. Very, not a set rule for Philly here. Other than the bad pair plays with the bad line, that seems perfectly fair. And then a slight lean toward Michkov plus Sanheim, if you really wanted to pick lines based on 5-on-5 correlation. Okay. Ottawa and Tampa here. And yeah, I have to talk about this, so it's taking me a bit longer, but this is legitimately, what I do for most nights, because why would I go to sleep when there's hockey vids I can look at, just to catch up on all the action. Like, I find this very fun, even if my monotone doesn't necessarily point in that direction. This Ottawa-Tampa game was quite a fun one. Tampa jumps on them early. Ottawa fights back, actually pulls out the win with 2 very late goals, including an empty netter, which then Kucherov immediately negated, which was also kind of funny. So yeah, 5-4 finish. Pretty much a goalie failure all around. I know DJ played Ullmark and Cash, so he knows the failure that was the goalies in this game. But Bjorkstrand being up there with a couple of really nice power play looks, including a goal. We do love to see that. Kucherov, 2 man advantage goals and a post at 5-on-5. Brady Tkachuk with 9 attempts of not overly high danger. And Sanderson with 5 attempts of his own. I don't know. That's all fine. You'll note, Braden Point not on this list. So that's, I guess, this goal would have been his. Okay, top line for Tampa gave up 4 goals. So yeah, not quite all 4, but that's not great. You look under the hood, and they got pretty much caved in as well. Okay. Who did they go out against the most? Kucherov, Sanderson, they lost those minutes. Yeah, they lost the Pinto minutes, decidedly. They fought to even against Cousins and got dominated by Stützle and Eller. So yeah, not a great night for Gensel, Point, Kucherov, despite their DFS relevance in this one. We will see. Obviously, Nikita Kucherov does not have the greatest defensive reputation. I personally think Braden Point's super overrated as a result of that. I mean, he's just a finisher, but I don't think he's necessarily a good two-way player. Jay Gensel's fine, but yeah, if that top line struggles to play defense all year, Tampa's going to be in a world of trouble, because I don't think Cirelli's good enough to overcome, just having a top line that's trading chances back and forth, because their bottom 6 is just horrendous. I mean, Gord, Bjorkstrand, Chaffee is, I guess, okay as a third line, and then this fourth line, Douglas, Holmberg, Geeky, is just brutal. So, I guess the main beneficiary would have been Greg, Pinto, Giroux. That makes sense. And what else? Anything else to pick at here? 23 minutes for Gensel, including killed penalties, 21 for Kucherov, 20 for Point. Gord, Hagel, Sorelli with PK time, get above 15. Berkshire of power play time gets above 15. Curtis Douglas plays 5 minutes, about what you'd expect. And then Hedman playing 24. No one else above 20, but Darren Radish bringing up the weight at 18. Just means, obviously Moser should be back, so we'll see what that does to these minutes, but it does not look like they're overly prioritizing, a certain pair, or deprioritizing a third pair, for that matter, which could make, the Lilleberg-Crozier kind of interesting as punts, but we'll see what happens with Moser back in the lineup. Curtis McDermott playing 2 minutes, very funny. So basically 11 and 6 for Ottawa. Kachuk, Pinto, Stützle, Amadio, Gregg, Zetterlund, all between 17 and 19 minutes. Zetterlund stuck on that top line for the entire game. What did he do shots-wise? Did not do anything shots-wise, so that's something to keep an eye on. Because that's a guy who historically has pretty strong shot rates. So, and yeah, defensive. Interesting that the fourth line got a bunch of offensive zone starts. Kucherov, Point, Gensel, not really focused on with that. No defensive starts for Kucherov, but also only 1 offensive start. So yeah, that's not great. We would like to see more offensive zone usage for Kucherov if he's going to repeat as Art Ross winner. Montreal and Detroit. Montreal took Detroit to the cleaners. Started off hot for Detroit with that early Larkin goal, and very quickly went from bad to worse. 4 quick goals before the middle of the second, another late second by Slavkovsky, and that was all she wrote. We did have some rookies here, though, that we want to look at. Specifically, here we go. Sandin Pellikka played 23 minutes in his first game here. Seider 23, Edvinsson 23. That Edvinsson-Sandin Pellikka pairing was very good. They actually didn't allow any goals against. Albert Johansson, Travis Hamonic allowed 3 against. Chiarot, Seider allowed 1 against, and then they allowed a power play goal against. So, yeah, really not a problem from a Detroit standpoint, other than if they need someone better than Johansson Hamonic on that third pair. Like, that is just brutal. I want to say they actually like Albert Johansson as an organization, which is tough. They signed Hamonic for God knows what reason. But, if they keep putting up shit like this, like, they're gonna find someone else. Like, that's a guarantee. So, if they have a functional top pair, they're still in good shape. And with Sandin Pellikka and Edvinsson, they certainly seem like they might. Looks like Mo Seider was fine too, as long as he was away from Chiarot. So, nothing that I'm overly concerned about here. Yeah, where is... Am I missing... Okay, there's Johansson. And... Who's the other guy there? What am I missing? Rasmussen... What the hell? Where is that guy? Hamonic. Yeah, where is Hamonic here? Oh, yeah, below the 50% mark. The only player on Detroit that finished below 50%, Travis Hamonic. Yeah, that's tough. But yeah, not a terrible game from a Detroit perspective. They certainly also could have gotten a better effort from John Gibson, who got yanked after making, I believe, 5 saves on 12 shots for a 62% save percentage. So they'll just throw that game out, probably return the same top 6 and top 4 in their next one, and they might be different. Who knows? We'll see. Emmett Finney wound up playing 12 minutes, no special teams time. They ended the game, DeBrincat, Raymond, Finney, though, so not anything that we should be reacting to going forward, in my opinion. For Montreal, okay, here's an interesting one. Back-to-back, they were out, jumped on them early. Pretty much just play the entire bench. Good strategy, but worth noting, going forward back-to-backs for Montreal. They will prioritize rest for these guys if the situation arises. So, solid effort. That also probably contributes to the 5-on-5 expected goals nature. Just, hey guys, take it easy. Try not to get killed. And yeah, we're up 5 goals or 4 goals. So, just don't do anything dumb and go into your little shell. That's probably what I'm taking away from this game. And start of the year, Larkin, Raymond, Finney, glued to Mo Seider, so that's cool. Sandin, Pellikka, Edvinsson, much more with Casper, DeBrincat, and Kane. Do like that. That is also what we were expecting. Hudson, Demidov, Cabin, and Newhook is fun. I don't know. That's about it. Rangers and Buffalo here. Buffalo, cursed. It's all bad. Everything's gonna be bad forever. Just one game. Buffalo played totally fine. Their big guns were awesome. Dahlin, Tage. Obviously Norris is now hurt, but they were very good in this game. Just couldn't get a goal. They got Igor, who had a shutout. So that happens. Not gonna worry about it too much. With no Owen Power and no Michael Kesselring, Dahlin and Byram both played 25 minutes. That is pretty good. Ryan McLeod played 18 minutes with PK time. That also, with Doris out, he's on the top power play. So we could see 20 plus minutes for Ryan McLeod, which I personally love to see. And Dahlin at home, playing mostly with Tuck, Kulik, basically the top 6, and Ryan McLeod in that kind of second, third line, whatever you want to call it, playing with Samuelson and Timmins. The final thing, they did switch it from. So they switched their lines around a bunch. So we can see here that Norris and Tage finished with Zucker despite starting with Krebs. McLeod and Doan started with Quinn, finished with Krebs, and Tuck Kulik started with Zucker but finished with Quinn. So I think we saw practice, and I think that's how it's going to go, except Peyton Krebs to the top line now with Tage and Zucker, but check that if you're playing DFS on Saturday, because I'm recalling something I saw now probably 12 hours ago. Finally, Chicago-Boston. We mentioned the Sam Renzel thing, or if I didn't, I should have. With Alex Vlasic back in the fold, they did go 11-7, which makes the results immediately not comparable. But Wyatt Kaiser led the team in 5-on-5 ice time, interestingly. Renzel was second, Levshinov third, Vlasic fourth, but with a heap of PK time for Vlasic there. And yeah, Vlasic paired with Renzel, but I guess Crevier made his way into the pairs and kind of screwed everything up. With that 11-7 in mind, Bedard, Nazar, Mikheyev, but in order of ice time, Bedard, Nazar, Mikheyev, Bedard with Burakovsky and Doc, but clearly Bedard was just double shifting all around the lineup. And going forward, I mean, that was just a miss on my part. Like I said, I was extremely busy, didn't bet anything, didn't really pay much attention to what was going on in warm-ups because I was scrambling. But 11-7 setups with a clear stud like Connor Bedard, yeah, you can one-off that guy, because whoever you stack him with, there's no guarantee he's on the ice with those guys when he scores. It's just, perfect situation there. So Bedard seems like he had a really good game with a goal and an assist. Looks like he only had 2 shots, but on 7 attempts, so that's good news. He was kind of stifled against Florida. And Nazar did it again. I mean, 0.64 expected goals, 7 attempts, 4 on net. Very good stuff from Frank Nazar once again for a second straight game. On the Boston side, it was pretty much a one-line show. No surprise. Or sorry, I'm thinking of the Washington game. But Geeky, Lindholm, Pastrnak led the way, played a bunch. Fraser Minton scoring the overtime winner. And I guess, Hampus Lindholm did get hurt, so that's something to keep an eye on going forward. But that would just mean Zadorov jumps into a much larger role, so keep an eye on his price tag for DFS. Regardless of who subs in on their third pair, that just gives Zadorov a big defensive responsibility with Lohrei and AHL type guy as his left-handed counterparts on this blue line. McAvoy, let's see. Let's do McAvoy playing with his friends. No, it was McAvoy, Zacha for the most part, and Pastrnak line played with Zadorov, and obviously with the injury to Lindholm, things got messed up a bit, so, but primarily, Zadorov for the Pastrnak line, which is quite interesting. Bedard mostly got Mac Breslik. Once again, they also had a weird D room because they had 7, so anytime there's an odd number of defensemen, things get a little wonky. No D starts for Bedard. Obviously, good coaching there, I would say. And the matchups look pretty straightforward. It doesn't look like Marco Sturm is going to be hard matching anything. Even McAvoy didn't have like a strong skew toward one particular player. Obviously, Bedard would likely be that player. So it seems like Boston's just going to play it as they are and not focus too much on matchups at this point in time. Overall, decent game for Bedard. I would say a very good game for Bedard. Break even with these guys, making them look real good. Burakovsky and Doc, and Bedard just played so much around the lineup that he just gets pulled closer to the average of his team. And yeah, not a great night for Rinzel. 30% expected goals. So obviously we saw the role dry up a bit from his 25 in game 1 to 19 in game 2, and that's what the coach told us. So, with 7D, it's unlikely that number holds going forward, but it does show that they are being, restrictive on his minutes versus opening night. So, alright, I'm going to get out of here. That should just about do it. There's all of the games so far this year. There's everything that I go to look at. Finally, just a look at some of the key performers early on. League leaders in points: Jack Eichel, Evgeny Malkin with 6 and 5 points respectively. League leaders in shot attempts: Dorofeyev and Marchand with 16, Zibanejad with 15. Leader with only 1 game played: Chychrun had 13 shot attempts in game 1. Gunther had 12. So shout out to those guys. Werenski, Lacombe, Zellweger also had 12 per natural stat trick. I did not think that, is that really what the pie chart here showed? Or the cake chart? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, I get 11 based on Micah stuff, but that's fine. I did not expect either number to be that high, I guess, on second thought. So that is good, well, fun. And on a team level, who had a bunch of shots to start? Columbus, Buffalo, Anaheim. Boy, yep, real murderers row right there. Seattle makes their way up in here, which is interesting. Again, Anaheim dominated for a stretch of that game, but then Seattle took over the third. So that game being a lot of fun is pretty interesting. When you look at shot attempts, though, we see Anaheim stand out, and Seattle, not so much, but 16th, middle of the pack. So just they got a lot of shots through, I guess. Expected goals: Capitals, Pens, Blues, Sens, Columbus Blue Jackets. Defensively, yeah, the Red Wings, Oilers, Senators. Pretty much the teams that got goalied because, hey, you know how you get very few expected goals? If there are no rebounds and no close shots, if all the far range shots go in, then that's a low expected goal amount and the faceoff goes back to center ice. So not much we're going to take from one game here, of course. All right. that is literally everything that I have looked at, that I would look at. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a bit from this. And best of luck on Saturday or whenever you're watching this, since obviously this will be useful for at least a couple days after the Saturday slate, as far as just getting our heads on straight, what teams are doing what and where around the league. Thank you all for watching. Please make sure you subscribe to moods.beehive.com. It is free. It will send you an email anytime I write something. Please follow me on Twitter, on X, at Fake Moods, and follow the Moinscape podcast. Make sure you subscribe on your podcast app of choice. I personally use Pocket Casts, and I pay for the little thing that makes it Pocket Cats. So I got a little, I got this little, let's see. Can you see that? Alright, we did it. Thank you all for watching. I'm out of here.